Hey, what's up you guys, and welcome to another Pokemon challenge. Since this is the thing people are by far the most interested in on my channel, I decided to make another one, because I'm a pathetic attention whore. By now you know the drill, I will be completing an entire game with a single Pokemon, and this time I will be completing Pokemon Black with a single Archen. And now you're probably like, how is that hard at all? Archen has amazing attack stats and amazing speed stats. This is gonna be the easiest challenge yet. Well, there's a catch. You see, Archen has one of the worst abilities in the game, Defeatist. Whenever Archen gets below half HP, its attack stats are cut in half. And no, there's no benefit from it, that's just it. So what I will be doing is, I will bring Archen down to half HP and do every fight with a half HP Archen, which thus has terrible attack stats. The rules this time are a combination of my Sunkern challenge and my no battles challenge, because the rules are as follows. I will be using no health items, I will be using no potions in battle, I will actually be allowing TMs, but I won't be allowing the broken TMs such as Double Team, Flash, Attract, etc. And last but not least, I will not be giving Archen any drugs, both inside and outside of battles. That being said, it was time to collect our Archen. To make this challenge a little more doable, I decided to reset a bunch of times to get an adamant Archen and thus have a higher attack stat. After that, it was finally time to start our run. The Sunkern challenge taught me that EVs were really important in these ridiculous challenges, and conveniently enough, Route 1 contained a bunch of Pokemon that would give me attack EVs, so I figured it was in my best interest to just defeat 252 Pokemon here and get max attack stats immediately. Doing this got me up to level 15, and I don't think it's a surprise I completely slaughtered Sharon on my way to the first gym. In this game you reach the gym pretty quickly, and I got there in a couple minutes. In this gym the trainer you battle is based on your starter, but since I replaced Snivy with Archen when picking my starter Pokemon, the game decided to make me battle the fire trainer as if I had actually picked Snivy. And I was really happy with this matchup because this guy only has a Lillipup and a Pansear, and because of my EV training I was already at a high enough level that this gym was no problem at all. Lillipup only took 2 wing attacks to kill, and Pansear was down with only 2 rock throws, and literally 7 minutes after finishing my EV training, I already had my first gym badge. Then I moved on to the second gym, ditching Ancient Power in the process. The route to the second gym really isn't that interesting, so we're gonna jump right into the gym fight. The second gym leader is Lenora, and she leads off with a level 18 Herdier. On my way to the second gym, I had leveled Archen up to level 20, and because of its shitty ability and Herdier's Intimidate, I wasn't able to touch this Herdier at all, and I got completely destroyed by Lenora's first Pokemon. Since I wasn't able to touch her Herdier at all, I decided I needed a really long training session and gain at least 10 levels. During my training session, Archen leveled up to level 28 and it learned Acrobatics, which is one of Archen's signature moves and is a really strong move. So I said bye bye to Wing Attack. In between these recordings is literally a month because I really didn't feel like training, but a month later my Archen was level 33 and I challenged Lenora again. This time I had higher stats and the new move and I was pretty confident that I was gonna win this battle. My first Acrobatics was so strong that it insta-killed her Herdier, and then she sent out a Watchog. This Watchog wasn't a problem at all, it just was a little annoying because it used Hypnosis, which delayed the battle by a bit, but as soon as I woke up I killed it in 2 Acrobatics and I obtained my second gym badge. After some really lame plot development with Team Plasma, lame as in their Pokemon are just not really good, we arrived at the Castelia City gym. The third gym leader is Burgh, and he had no idea what was about to happen to him. Burgh's gym is a bug type gym, and obviously flying and rock type attacks are super effective against bug types. Not only did I have that advantage, but Archen was also level 34, opposed to for example his first Pokemon, Whirlipede, which was only level 21. It only took a single Acrobatics to take his Whirlipede down and then he sent out a Dwebble. Dwebble wasn't strong enough to take 1 rock throw and we were already at Burgh's final Pokemon, Livani. Livani is a pretty decent Pokemon, especially in later generations when it has Sticky Web, but this time it didn't stand a chance against my super effective Acrobatics from an Archen that was 11 levels above it. 3 moves, 3 kills, and Burgh was done for. I think he probably cried himself to sleep later that day, but whatever, 3 badges is 3 badges. Then we moved on to Nimbasa City. On my way to the city something happened that pisses me off every time I play this game. You see, in this game you have 2 rivals, Bianca and Sharon, and for some reason these 2 always want to battle you. It feels like at least once per route. And this wouldn't be so annoying if they weren't such unlikable characters and if their team wasn't so goddamn awful. Even if you have world's worst Pokemon, these teams are so easy to defeat, it's actually incredible. It's so annoying that I have to battle them so many times because they're just so bad and it's just a waste of time. The only thing I really gained from this is that Archen learned Crunch at level 35 from battling Bianca. But these are easily the worst rivals or friends or whatever you wanna call them of any Pokemon game. Anyway, back to business. I arrived at the Nimbasa City gym. This gym is an electric type gym and I figured I would have some problems with it. However, half of the trainers in this gym had Emolgas, which are weak to rock type attacks, and the other half had weak ass Pokémon, which I could easily defeat with my Archen. Then I arrived at the gym leader, Elesa, at level 41. Her first Pokémon was a level 25 Emolga, and I thought I would have a good chance against Elesa if her Pokémon were this low leveled. Her Emolga wasn't able to take a single rock throw, and we moved on to her second Pokémon, which was also a level 25 Emolga. The only difference between these two is this one is a female and the previous one was a male, so yeah, great variation. Anyway, this Emolga didn't like my rock throw either, and we moved on to her final Pokémon, Zebstrika. Even though I consider Zebstrika a really strong Pokémon, this one was only level 27, and I figured Rock Throw might be able to one-hit KO it, or maybe if a single Rock Throw didn't KO it, a crit would do the trick. However, all of this didn't matter at all, because Zebstrika is lightning fast and it outsped me. It used Spark and it instantly KO'd me, and no matter how many times I tried, all it used was Spark. I knew in order to get this gym badge, all I needed to do was outspeed the Zebstrika, and that does meant training my Archen a couple of levels again. While training my Archen, it learned Rock Slide at level 45 in the process, and I ditched Rock Throw because it's a pretty weak move anyway. I got back to Elesa's Zebstrika at level 47, and I indeed outsped it. And not only did I outspeed it, Rock Slide was strong enough to take it down in a single hit. And thus I obtained my 4th gym badge with a level 47 Archen. On my way to Driftfield City, Charon decided to be a little shit again and challenge me, so I completely beat his ass and then I arrived in Driftfield City. Before being able to challenge the 5th gym, Team Plasma was for some random ass reason hiding in a freezer, so I beat them up as well, and then I moved on to challenge Clay, the 5th gym leader. He led off with a level 29 Krokorok, and then something happened that doesn't really make sense. According to Cerebi, this Krokorok should have Intimidate and thus lower my already halved attack stats. However, when I sent in Archen, Intimidate didn't activate. I recently watched the Pokémon World Championships, and whenever they sent out their Pokémon on the first turn, Intimidate did actually work. So I have no idea why this didn't work this time, maybe some of you in the comments can explain. But I have no idea what happened here, maybe Cerebi is just wrong. Anyway, back to the battle. Krokorok's defense stats aren't amazing, and on top of that, my Archen was almost 20 levels higher, and thus it didn't stand a single acrobatics. Then he sent out a Palpitoad, and this wasn't a problem either, despite it being a bulkier Pokémon than Krokorok. A single acrobatics did the trick and I already moved on to Clay's final Pokémon, Excadrill. Despite being 17 levels higher, I had nothing to hit Excadrill with. Crunch, Rock Slide and Acrobatics wouldn't hurt this guy at all, and no matter how many times I reset, he kept using Rock Slide. It was at this point that I started to realize something. DS emulator save states aren't the same as GBA emulator save states. Whenever you make a save state in GBA emulators, the situation is different and they use different moves every time. There's a different situation happening every time. Whenever I loaded my save states on this DS emulator, the opposing Pokémon would use the same moves, I would take the same amount of damage, and I couldn't really make the situation go from good to bad by just reloading my save states. Because of this realization, I decided to not bother challenging Clay anymore, and I decided to leave the gym, looking for answers. It was very obvious to me that all I needed to defeat this Excadrill was a ground type move, and thus I decided to look for the move that everyone is using on Archen's evolution on Pokémon Showdown, which is Earthquake. I knew Earthquake was in the Relic Castle, and thus I figured I'd just go look for it. But then, because I didn't defeat the Elite Four and N yet, I wasn't able to actually access Earthquake, and I felt really dumb for forgetting this. Then I decided to go with the lesser move, Dig, instead, and I ran back to Clay. On top of getting access to Dig, the Relic Castle, and continuously trying Clay, I'd got an Archen up to level 53 when I reached this Excadrill again. I was kind of skeptical about Dig, because it isn't world's best move, but Archen proved me wrong and it killed Excadrill in a single hit. And thus I obtained my 5th gym badge after a really pathetic search for Earthquake. Then we went on to the next gym and Bianca wanted to battle us again, after which she gave us HM Fly. And this is the perfect time to come back to the statement I made a couple of minutes ago. Because in between recording that part and this part, there's actually something I want to add to my statement about my friends in this game. And the reason for this is my Dry Bread's Bidoof challenge video. This video kept being recommended to me, so I decided to click on it for once. While having this video playing in the background, I scrolled through his comments and everyone was straight up cooking this guy for hating on Generation 5. A lot of people commented on how he was complaining about pretty much everything in the game, and because of that I wanted to check what the fuss was about. And honestly, you guys are a bunch of sensitive people, like for real, man. I'm not gonna go into depth with all the comments I didn't agree with, but most of the comments also talked about how my Dry Bread said battling your friends continuously is really annoying, and most of the people defended the game, saying it's a story-driven game and Bianca and Charon fit in the game really well. Well, first of all, let me just say this. Imagine playing a Pokémon game for the storyline. Secondly, while I do feel like the story in Black and White is really good, I still feel like Cheren and Bianca don't add anything. Watching my Dry Bread's video and seeing the comments under his video really made me realize how toxic the Pokemon community can really be. A lot of y'all are like, okay, listen up, mister. Your opinion isn't the same as mine and I am always correct. So let me tell you this, you fucking fat. Then we moved on to the Chargestone Cave where Team Plasma was waiting for us. And at the end of this cave we had to battle N. The reason why I didn't introduce N till this point is because I wanted to talk about Bianca and Cheren first. Plus the previous battles with N weren't that interesting in my opinion, he just had a really weak team. Even though I would call Bianca and Cheren rivals as well, N is your actual rival in this game. The reason why I separate him from Bianca and Cheren is because I actually think he's a really cool character. His philosophical way of thinking and his thoughts about what's good and what's bad are really interesting to me. And in my opinion, N has one of the best dialogues in any Pokemon game. That being said, I easily took care of N in this battle. Because of my newly acquired Dig, I could easily kill his Boldore and his Klink. Parasite couldn't do much against my acrobatics, and Joltik didn't stand a single Rock Slide. Even though this battle wasn't that interesting, I just wanted to show my appreciation for N, and that's why I decided to highlight this battle. After breaking all my bones by being shot out of a cannon, we challenged gym leader number 6, Skyla. Skyla is a flying type gym leader, and because I had access to a stab Rock Slide, this gym wasn't a problem at all. Her Swoobat, Swanna and Unpheasant weren't a problem at all. On our way to Icarus City, Cheren decided it was time for an ass whooping again, and thus I gave it to him. I mean, maybe it turns him on or something. Other than that, nothing worth noting happened, and we arrived at the 7th gym leader, Brycen. After politely asking him for a battle, he told me to talk to the hand. This of course made me furious and I wanted to destroy his team. Luckily his gym is an ice type gym and I could do just that. I took care of his Vanillish with a single Rock Slide and then he sent out a Beartic. I gave Beartic the same treatment and I one-shot it with a single Rock Slide as well. Then his final Pokemon was Creogonal. Creogonal has a really good special defense stat and a really bad defense stat, and thus he wasn't able to survive a single Rock Slide either. For the third time this run, 3 hits, 3 kills and I obtained my 7th gym badge. After this we watched the cool cutscene with N and his Zekrom, which honestly feels like summoning a god card in Yu-Gi-Oh! And then we moved on to the final gym in Appaloosa City. But not before destroying Bianca once again. Before arriving at the final gym leader, Drayden, I had done a lot of training and I challenged him at level 75. I felt like I needed to be super overleveled because of my half stats and because of the fact that I didn't have any super effective moves against these dragon Pokemon. It turned out I had overleveled Archen a little too much, because Fracture, Druddigon and Hexorus all didn't stand a chance against a single acrobatics. And once again, I sound like a broken CD at this point. 3 hits, 3 kills, and I obtained my final gym badge. Then there was one thing left to do, the Pokémon League. Before arriving at the Pokémon League, however, Cheren wanted to be defeated one last time, so he could tell his friends that he got beaten by the future champion, and of course I accepted that request. The fun thing about the Pokémon League in this game is that you can challenge the Elite Four in any order you want. I decided to pick Marshall, the fighting type trainer, first because I thought my acrobatics would completely destroy his team. I didn't train my Archen any further than level 76 yet because I thought this was enough to sweep the entire Pokémon League. But as per usual in these challenges, I was incorrect. His first Pokemon was Fro, and despite being a black belt Kung Fu master, he didn't stand a single acrobatics. Then he sent out a Sock, and I thought I was gonna one-shot this as well, because his defense stats are worse than Fro. However, I forgot one crucial thing, which I should know because I play Pokemon Showdown a lot. This Sock has the ability Sturdy, and he can survive a hit, no matter how strong it is. I used an acrobatics and he survived on 1 HP, after which he completely destroyed me with a Stone Edge. Because of this stupid ability, I decided it was a good idea to not battle Marshall first, and I decided to try Chantal instead. This wasn't a good idea either, because even though I got to her final Pokemon, Golurk, I wasn't able to kill this Golurk in 1 hit, and her first Pokemon, which name is impossible to pronounce, Archen wasn't able to kill this girl in 1 hit, and thus it was able to hit me, as well as the Golurk, tag teaming me to death. I realized it was probably time to get Archen up to level 100 to stand a chance against the Elite Four, and thus I repeatedly battled Chantal and Marshall to get to level 100. At level 91 I was actually able to get past Sock because he missed his Stone Edge, after which the trainer AI just uses full restores until he runs out, after which I eventually KO him. Then he sent out a Conkeldurr, which wasn't able to endure a single hit either, and his final Pokemon was Minchao, which has a really fragile defense stat and thus was KO'd in a single acrobatics as well. In this training session I was able to beat Marshall, but I died shortly after. Quite a bit later, I finally reached level 100 against a wild snake. This was pretty much all I could do in terms of maximizing my stats, and at this point I just had to throw myself at the Elite Four. Funnily enough, I defeated Marshall on my first try and we moved on to Chantal. I got really lucky against her because after using a rock slide on she who must not be named, her Will-O-Wisp missed, after which the trainer AI just spammed full restores and I was able to KO it in just 2 rock slides. Next up was Jellicent. Its defense isn't strong enough to survive a single acrobatics and thus it was an easy kill. And it was the same for her third Pokemon, Chandelure. Chandelure's defense stats aren't the best in the world and a stab rock slide did the trick easily. Then we got to her final Pokemon, Golurk, which I thought would cause some problems because it's a very bulky Pokemon and one attack would 100% KO Archen. Luckily the game decided 52 levels above it was enough and I KO'd it in a single acrobatics. 2 of the Elite Four down, 2 to go. Next I woke up Caitlyn, who was for some reason sleeping at 5 PM. Caitlyn's team is a psychic team and luckily I had the solution for that in Crunch. Or so I thought. One thing I forgot to mention is that I replaced Crunch with Dig. The reason for this is that I wanted to keep Leer. And I know at first glance this seems pretty stupid. But whenever I ran to the Pokemon Center when my Archen was out of moves, he obviously was also healed up to full HP. And thus I decided that the easiest way to get Archen back down to half HP was to keep Leer and use it on wild Pokemon so that they could freely damage me. The reason for ditching Crunch was because Rock Slide was Step and Acrobatics was Step as well. And at that point I really needed Dig in order to defeat the Excadrill. But yeah, that decision came back to bite me against Caitlyn and her Psychic-type Pokemon. Her first Pokemon was Reuniclus, and despite it having a decent defense stat and me not having Crunch, I still KO'd it in a single Acrobatics. Next up was Sigilyph. Luckily Sigilyph is a partial flying type and thus Rock Slide was able to KO it in a single hit. Next up was Gothitelle, and she wasn't able to stand the single Acrobatics either. Once again I KO'd every Pokemon in a single hit and we moved on to her final Pokemon, Musharna. Musharna has an amazing defense stat and I was dumb enough to use Rock Slide instead of Acrobatics. Musharna survived and used Psychic, but because Defeatist doesn't lower my defense stats and I was level 100, Psychic only did 58 damage. After this, Caitlyn used a full restore and I used Acrobatics instead of Rock Slide. And Acrobatics was actually strong enough to KO Musharna in a single hit. And thus I had only one Elite Four member left to go. The final Elite Four member was Grimsley, Master of Dark types. He led off with a Scrafty, which luckily has Moxie instead of Intimidate, so this battle would be way easier for me. Because Scrafty is a partial fighting type, Archen had no problems taking it down with a single Acrobatics. Next up was Bisharp. Luckily Bisharp is partially a steel type and thus he wasn't able to survive a single dig. Then we moved on to Crocodile, which did actually intimidate me. I don't know why he didn't just start with this Pokemon, since Archen is a physical attacker, but hey, thanks for letting me take down your first 2 Pokemon with ease. Despite its intimidate, Dig still did over half HP damage and he used a Foul Play which took me down to 21 HP. After this, a single Acrobatic was more than enough to take it down, and we moved on to his final Pokemon, Liepard. I was really glad that this was his final Pokemon, because anything bulky would have 100% tanked the hit, since I was intimidated on top of having my attack stats halved. Liepard is a very useful but very fragile Pokemon, and I took it down in a single Acrobatics, and thus I defeated the Elite Four. Before moving on to the final 2 battles, can I just say that the Elite Four feels way easier than in other games and other challenges I did before. I don't know what it is, but the Pokemon seem to go down way easier. And even with an Archen that has half its attack stats, it wasn't really that hard to take them down as soon as I got Archen up to level 100. So I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like the Elite Four is a little easier than in other games. Or maybe Archen is just a really good Pokemon, even with half its attack stats. Then, before doing the final fights, the game wants you to catch Reshiram. Because I was doing a single Pokemon challenge, I didn't want to catch Reshiram, so I killed it instead. But apparently you can't progress in this game unless you catch Reshiram, which is really stupid in my opinion, but whatever. So I threw my Master Ball at Reshiram and then it was time for the final 2 battles of the game. First up was N, and before continuing, can I just say that N has such a cool team at this point. Every single one of his Pokemon is a Pokemon I like. Especially this little guy, of course. Anyway, N led off with his Zekrom, and because the developers want to make this seem like a really cool fight, they switched your first Pokemon with the card Reshiram, and thus I started with Reshiram instead of my Archen. On top of that, N also heals your Pokemon to full health, so Defeatist wasn't even activated. However, I had a very easy solution for this. On turn 1 I switched Reshiram with Archen and it took a Fusion Bolt to the face, bringing it down to 71 HP. And thus Defeatist was activated. A single dig was enough to take this beast down, even though I needed a crit to do so. And we moved on to his second Pokemon, Vanilluxe. Vanilluxe obviously isn't a problem, because it has a fairly weak defense stat and a single Rock Slide was able to KO it. Next up was Caracosta, and Caracosta is a beast in terms of defense. Despite being 50 levels higher, I wasn't able to KO it in a single hit, and I was pretty sure he was going to KO me because he used Waterfall when I was underground. However, when I used Dig, he was dumb enough to use Stone Edge, and I was lucky enough to have it miss. After this, I expected N to use full restores, and because Dig is a 2-turn move, Caracosta would still KO me in the end. I just clicked Acrobatics because YOLO, and for some reason N didn't use his full restore despite having 4 in his back pocket, and thus I KO'd his Caracosta, which doesn't make any sense. Next up was my brother, although he was way lower level than me. His defense stats aren't that great, and thus I was able to defeat it with a single Rock Slide. Then he sent out Clink Clang, and even though it's the evolved version of Clink, its defense stats still wasn't enough to survive a single dig. Then we moved on to his final Pokemon, Zoroark. I have no idea why N caught a Zoroark and then doesn't use it for the only thing it's good for, which is its ability, Illusion. I mean, all of my hits would have still done neutral damage to it, so I would have probably KO'd it in a single hit, but at least it would have been really cool to see that ability in play. I have no idea why Game Freak decided to put this guy at the end, or maybe it was just a trainer AI that decided that. Anyway, it kind of sucks that such a cool ability wasn't put to use in this battle. Zoroark wasn't able to survive a single acrobatics, and I defeated what is probably one of my favorite rivals in any Pokemon game for the final time this run. Well, here we are, the final battle of this run, against Ghetsis. Like I mentioned earlier, save states don't seem to work on DS emulators, and because there's only a long cutscene between battling N and battling Ghetsis, losing to Ghetsis meant having to do the entire N battle over again as well. I was really not looking forward to this, because Ghetsis has a really good team, and I would probably have to reset for hours upon hours, doing the N battle again as well. But then the most ridiculous battle in the history of Pokemon battles happened. Ghetsis led off with He, who must not be named, and the game wanted me to admire Reshiram again, instead of using Archen. On top of that, in between the N battle and the Ghetsis battle, my Pokemon were healed again, so once again Defeatist wasn't activated. I switched in Archen and let it get damage to 96 HP. After that, He, who must not be named, didn't stand a single Rock Slide, and I moved on to his second Pokemon, which was a Bisharp. Just like Grimsley's Bisharp, it wasn't able to survive a single hit, and I moved on to his third Pokemon, Seismic Toad. And you were very likely wondering, why did Words hype this battle up so much? It wasn't really that exciting so far, he just got 2 hits, 2 kills. Well, that's about to change, because what you're about to see is one of the luckiest things I've ever had in any Pokemon game. And it's really funny that I just recently posted my accuracy video, bitching about accuracy. Because in this battle, everything went my way, and I can say with a 100% certainty that I have never been this lucky before in any Pokemon battle. Before continuing this fight, let me just say that it was at this point that I made an inexcusable mistake. Instead of using acrobatics, which would have made the fight way easier, I repeatedly used Dig. You have to understand, I was playing this game at like 3-4 AM with Revenge of the Dreamers Free blasting in the background, and my mind was just kind of AFK. But even then, knowing I was pretty much on autopilot, this footage is so hard to watch I almost can't get through it myself. I've seriously been contemplating editing this out because it's so cringe-worthy. But because of using Dig, this fight became one of the most ridiculous fights I've ever seen in my life. So yeah, all I really have to say is, enjoy the cringe. So I'm just gonna show the full fight to you, so you know I'm not bullshitting you. I was 100% certain that I had nothing that could kill this in a single hit, because before this I had already tried this battle a couple of times, and he was continuously able to KO me in a single hit. But there was one thing left to do. You see, Rock Slide has a 30% chance to flinch, and I figured the only way to defeat this Seismic Toad is just to prevent it from hitting me. And I shit you not, this was my first attempt. I used the Rock Slide and I immediately got the 30% flinch. Then I followed it up with a Dig because I thought that was gonna KO. And Seismic Toad used Rain Dance to boost its water attacks obviously. I mean, not that he needed it, but still. Then the next turn started. I used Dig and it didn't actually KO. He was left with just a few hit points and I thought I was done for. Then Seismic Toad used Muddy Water, which has 85% accuracy, and it actually got the 15%, it missed. But at this point it was very obvious what was about to happen. Seismic Toad would get a full restore from Ghetsis AI. Even though I got super lucky, I still was back at the start, and on top of that Seismic Toad avoided my Rock Slide. Then I used another Rock Slide and it flinched again. I couldn't believe my luck. But I still wasn't there, it was still at more than half HP. Then I used the same strat again. I used Dig and knew it wouldn't KO, but I was hoping it would crit because I hadn't gotten a crit in a while at this point. Seismic Toad used Muddy Water, but he obviously couldn't hit me because I was underground, and the next turn started. I used Dig and it once again didn't KO. But Seismic Toad decided it was time to boost its water attacks again, instead of actually ending me. And thus, even though failing to KO Seismic Toad twice, I was still alive in this battle. I clicked another Rock Slide expecting him to use another full restore, but for some reason Ghetsis decided he was done with Seismic Toad and he just sacked it, he let me kill it. And I have no idea why he did this. If he used another full restore, he 100% had that battle because I couldn't keep getting lucky. Not that I really cared though, I defeated the biggest threat of his entire team, and after the luckiest fight of my life, he sent in Hydreigon. I had to actually Google how to pronounce this and I can't believe it's pronounced like this. I've been saying Hydreigon all my life. Anyway, I killed it with a single acrobatics, which according to this Pokemon calculator has a very low chance of happening. Then he sent out his second to last Pokemon, Bouffalant. This is a bulky ass Pokemon, but like I said, this battle was the luckiest battle I've ever had. I crit Bouffalant with acrobatics and he didn't stand a single chance. This meant we moved on to Ghetsis' final Pokemon, Electros. And you're not gonna believe this shit. I pressed Rock Slide and saw its health bar go down. And down. And down. I got another crit and I defeated Ghetsis with the biggest amount of luck I've ever seen in a Pokemon game. All I needed to defeat Ghetsis was 2 Rock Slide flinches and a Muddy Water miss against this Seismic Toad, a low percentage kill on Hydreigon, a crit on Bouffalant and a crit on Electros. How fucking insane is that? Instead of resetting for hours upon hours, I only had to reset for 30 minutes, because little did I know, I would have the luckiest battle I've ever had in my Pokemon career. Nothing has ever topped this, and I doubt anything will top this in a long time. Anyway, this meant that I had completed the challenge. The answer to the question, can you defeat Pokemon Black with a half HP Defeatist Archen, is most definitely yes, but I only needed the luckiest battle in my life. This challenge honestly went way better than expected. I thought I wasn't gonna be able to do anything, because Archen's half stats are really bad. But somehow this little bird pulled through and made it happen. I'm proud of what Archen accomplished, I'm proud of what I accomplished, and I'm so happy with that battle against Ghetsis, it's actually incredible. One thing I want to mention is that Pokemon in this game are impossible to pronounce. I'm sure I mispronounced a lot of Pokemon names and you're all gonna correct me in the comments, because that's what the Pokemon community does for some reason. But I don't care, eat a dick, I'm pronouncing it the way I want to pronounce it, okay? And then one final thing, despite my passive aggressive rant about Bianca and Sharon, I still want to say that Pokemon Black is still a really cool game. I really like the design, I like the new Pokemon they introduced in this generation, and I really like the storyline, especially N's character and the final battle, which isn't against the league leader but against N and then the final leader Ghetsis. I really think that's a cool idea, I really think it's different, and it was in my opinion a much needed change after the previous 4 generations. That being said, this is the end of the video. Thank you for watching this video. If you like this video then definitely leave a like rating. If you liked it even more then definitely hit the subscribe button. And I'll see you in the next Pokemon challenge, whenever that may be. Could be 2 months, could be 3 months, could be 2 weeks, who knows. Anyway, I'll see you guys later. Peace.